and we go to the Mountaineers state. We talk about the West Virginia Mountaineers. Joe, very intrigued by Neal Brown. They were 9-4 last year. I think a lot of people had Neal Brown on their hot seat. He turns it around. He's not let go, and there's a lot of hope in West Virginia. What do you make of the Mountaineers?
So I was a pretty big Mountaineer hater. I was not a believer. I was in the crop of individuals that last year thought that they were going to finish last in the Big 12, that they were losing too much last season. And Neal Brown and Garrett Green made me look like a dumbass. They proved me wrong. And I look at what they've got going on, and I kind of alluded to this on another deep dive that we did. I want to say it might have been the Kansas State one, where I look at their schedule, and they got one of the most brutal schedules possible out of any of the other Big 12 teams. All these other teams got cakewalks. They have to play Kansas. They have to play Oklahoma State. They have to play Iowa State, Kansas State, Arizona, Texas Tech. They have a tough draw. There's really not a lot of gimmies on top of the fact that they do have to play Penn State as well. It is going to be a really hard path for them. But all I can come to the conclusion is, Blake, is that I doubted them last year, and I'm not going to do it again. They have found ways to win, and I give Neal Brown credit. They find ways to win when they're not supposed to. I think that they've got a really good veteran offensive line, despite having to replace Zach Frazier up the middle, who I was a big fan of last draft. Wyatt Milam, who's their left tackle, is liked in NFL circles. I'm not a crazy huge fan, but big, talented left tackle, along with the rest of their offensive line. They've got some strong defensive players that I think could be productive. And I think that their run game is extremely impressive with a number of options, especially Jaheim White, that they can turn to. So, man, I'm not going to doubt them, Blake. I think that they're going to finish at the top of this conference. I think that they are just such a consistent wild card, in that Neal Brown finds ways to motivate these guys, even when they might have deficiencies at random position groups.
I don't think wide receiver is random.
Yeah, wide receiver is going to be but they didn't have anyone super sexy at that position last year. And I know Garrett Green was like a 53%.
Well, they ran the ball. I mean, Garrett Green, had 772 yards, 13 touchdowns. You talked about Jaheim White. C.J. Donaldson returns, the little bulldozer. He had 798. Joe, they had two or three guys over 700 yards rushing. I mean, they ran the ball all over the place. But they do not have the – now – could they have
last year? This is where I'm confused, though, is that like last year they didn't have it, and I kind of wonder, can they just overcome it again?
Well, they bring in Justin Robinson, from Mississippi State, Jaden Braid from Oklahoma State. I don't know. I have no idea. By the way, Cole Taylor, who transferred from LSU, I mean, is over there, and I'm kind of perplexed. I didn't even realize the kid, was doing anything there. I didn't watch a lot of West Virginia
conference on Phil Steele.
Well, my point is, Cole Taylor, that's your best receiving option. And so it brings me to the point of this. I think they're going to run the ball on anybody. I think they can.
Yeah.
They keep proving that they can do it, especially in this conference. Now, Penn State or, Oklahoma State, they ran all over. I mean, so many teams, Joe, that they did a lot of effective things too last year. But they have a massive issue. They were 85th last year in passing yards allowed. They went into the transfer portal and got 6 DBs or 6 corners. Okay, scream to me that your secondary stinks. Okay, they were bad against the run. Look, they were 46 in the country against the run, and so I thought that they did some really good things. Their entire defensive line returns, but Joe, they have the ultimate issue for any team that has an offensive pulse. Joe, they were almost last in the Big 12 last year in sacks with their 4 defensive linemen. 7 sacks out of 4 guys is not getting it done. You just got to be more productive at rushing the passer. And, Joe, it's just that their secondary has been so bad. I know what you're saying. Look, last year on paper, they weren't a sexy team. But, Joe, you're telling me that you don't think that you're good in the secondary when you go and get 6 DBs and corners, no less. The bottom line is I think that they're going to have to do exactly like you mentioned last year, control the ball, control the clock. And, by the way, man, I don't know if they get into a shootout with one of these teams. Like, if you get in a real shootout, can Garrett Green legitimately throw you into a win? And look, he was 53% passer last year, 2,406 yards, but he can run it. And I get that he's a multi-dynamic dude. But, Joe, as a guy that covered a multi-dynamic dude last year, what did LSU and Jaden have issues with? Are you still here, or did my power go out?
No, I'm still here.
All right, when LSU lost last year, it wasn't the legs that propelled them to win. Remember against Missouri, remember against Bama, he's having to throw the ball because they got to play catch-up. I just don't know if there's a lot of just things I like. There's a lot of things I really don't like.
But this is where I keep coming back to. Last year, their success was inexplicable. It was unexplainable. There was no way for us to like really pinpoint what led to their success. And I think it comes down to partially Garrett Green did emerge as a playmaker, not a consistent one. They realized that they could take more aggressive deep shots, and he's not somebody who's going to be consistent connecting over the middle of the field. One of the things that I've heard talked about him from those that have covered this West Virginia team, last year they had so many issues coming into the season. And last year we sat here and we looked at them and we did our Big 12 preview and we both circled them and just said, there's nothing to worry about. And they return a lot of important production. They didn't really lose that much. They didn't lose a lot.
Joe, that production wasn't a lot though. I mean, let's just be real.
Wait. I understand that. But there is a point to a younger core of guys after the previous season putting guys out and an older class leaving. They're coming in. We're expecting them to stink. They outperformed expectations without any crazy production. They run the ball really freaking well. They now come back with a lot of those guys in another year as starters with 113 career starts on their offensive line. I think that the way I'm projecting this and seeing this is I don't want to overthink it. I think that we give them the benefit of the doubt that they just improve and develop, which happens with football teams, and that because most of these guys have played together for so long, that they continue to improve and grow together. That's all I can really put together.
I get what you're saying, but I mean, we can't just say all of them are going to be better. Joe, you generated 7 sacks from your 4 guys that rush the passer consistently. It's not good enough. I mean, it's just not. And I get what you're saying, but like, what are we trying to project here? I mean, when you're 9-4, you want to build off of that, do you not? I mean, I don't think that they can beat Penn State. And I'm going to be real with you. Do I think they can beat Kansas? Yeah, I do, because tough matchup. I don't think they can beat Oklahoma State. What happens against Iowa State, a team that we're talking about next? Kansas State. Joe, you're really high on Arizona. We talked about Arizona.
I'm not high on Arizona. We did that segment. I'm not high on them.
Joe, you said that they're going to have 9 wins. At some point, they got to have that 9th win.
I said 8-4.
Well, let me give you an Arizona take in reference to the schedule.
I think West Virginia beats Arizona.
Hold on one second. Let's say Fafita and McMillan go absolutely stupid because your secondary was so bad last year. Are you going to be able to run the ball and keep up? Like, you can't talk about how bad a team's secondary was a year ago and him being one of the top quarterbacks in college football and think that he might not have the ability to light him up.
Had significantly more roster turnover than this West Virginia team did.
Fair.
West Virginia didn't get eaten up at all by the portal, which can't be said the same about a lot of teams in college football. That's what I'm coming back with.
Joe, do you really think that McMillan and Fafita won't connect on them?
They will. Last year, not only did my whole point is last year, there was no expectation for them to succeed. And not only did they win and have a positive record, they had one of the best records in the conference. They finished 9-4 last year, unless I'm misremembering. 9-4 last year.
9-4
with
last
no
year.
reason for them to be successful. And Neal Brown kept all these guys on this team. I normally come on here with like really well thought out analysis on position groups and pointing out why certain things will work and won't. This is the only time, as I said in the open, where I feel like I don't really have much of a take here. I'm just going off of the fact that they didn't lose that much. Neal Brown somehow is a better coach than we think he is, and it seems like he's keeping this team together. So
that's all fine and dandy. Could you win 8 or 9 games? Okay, could I see it? Yeah. But you're supposed to take that next step. I mean, it's not – I mean, you got Penn State on your schedule. Joe, I don't think they can beat our new favorite team that's on their schedule. They can't beat Texas Tech. And we're Texas Tech homers now.
Next year. I think they go 9-3. I think they beat Texas Tech. I'm sorry, Red Raider fans. I see it as them.
Well, then they're going to have to upset Oklahoma State or Kansas State, Kansas.
As I said in the Oklahoma State deep dive, I'm not scared of Oklahoma State. I'm just not.
All right. It's gonna backfire on you.
I think that Garrett. No, it backfired on me last year when I didn't pick them. So I'm not going to let it backfire. It's going to backfire on you. They are.
You forget about Gundy in October, baby.
I think you're forgetting about the Mountaineers and Neal Brown. I think that's what's happening here. You're overlooking them. We did it last year.
I will say this. The most important game on their schedule is, and I know that every one of them is going to disagree. Joe, it's Penn State. It's week 1. Let me tell you why. Yeah. Because if Drew Aller and that team and that offense is going to have to find a way to get things moving through the air. You want to test out see if your DB room has emerged and gotten better. Let's go up against a team that's really going to want to prove a point and start throwing it around a little bit too. All I'm saying is, Joe, I could see a scenario where Penn State's on upset alert week 1. I get what you're saying, yeah. But in that game, I don't know if Drew Aller can light them up through the air. It plays to what they want to do.
I think it's going to be a barometer for the success of both of these teams, where we're going to find out really quickly how good both of them are. And I think if West Virginia either upsets them or plays them close, tells us, hey, they're going to be a top 3 team in the Big 12. And then the inverse of that is if Penn State loses or if Penn State blows them out of the water, like I think everyone just assumes that they will, that is the indicator of, hey, West Virginia might stumble a little bit and Penn State is going to be a contender in the Big 10. But I wouldn't be surprised if West Virginia doesn't have a lot of success throwing the ball in this game, because Penn State's replacing a ton of guys in their secondary. They put out 3 guys to the NFL this past year with Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, and Daquan Hardy. All 3 of those guys are gone. So there's a lot of replacing that needs to be done on that defense and that offensive line that could lead to West Virginia maybe pulling this thing out. I don't know, dude. They are one of the few times, West Virginia, that I will willingly come to a preview and throw any logic out the window. It's the only time that I'm going to do it. It's not a bad take.
I don't think it's a bad take. I don't think it's a bad take. I just think that I have a lot more issues with them than I do. You're taking the optimistic approach, and I'm taking the pessimistic approach, and we're probably going to –
I wouldn't call it optimism. I wouldn't call it optimism. I would just call it –
if they go 9-3, that's optimism for them.
Optimism would be –
they went 9. West Virginia fans would take 9-3 again next year.
Yeah, and I think that 9-3 is how I see it going. 9-3, I think
I can't see them getting to 9 wins. I can't see it.
But yeah, we don't need to keep repeating points. All I'm just going to finish my thought here with is, if they were worse coming into last season than they are right now, then why would we expect them to take a step backward? BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your #1 source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions, with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.